Another hurdle cleared for Penn State, this time on the road against Iowa. Another huge one in sight at home against Michigan. We got Tim Ayton on the line for Black Shoe Diaries talking Penn State football. Join him on SB Nation, him and the rest of the staff covering Penn State athletics. Tim, how you doing today?
Doing good, Mark. It's one thing to beat Iowa at Kinnick Stadium. It's another thing to beat Iowa at Kinnick Stadium when you've also got an officiating crew that's clearly got it out against your team.
Yeah, usually a team going to Iowa, we throw out the style points. Hey, if you can just survive, like you say, the crowd, the setting, the tough defense, the grit of Iowa, if you can just get out there, regardless of the score, hey, it should be chalked up as an impressive win. But the officiating was under question, and there's a history there as well.
Yeah, so this was officiating crew led by a guy named John O'Neill, who's been notorious for having kind of making some really bad calls and having general anti-Penn State bias. And I don't just base this out of nothing. He's apparently told the players once, you guys are lucky to be still playing football, reference to the, Jerry Sandusky scandal and the sanctions that came after that. My understanding is he's also bad towards Michigan. I'm not certain about that. I'm sure maybe some Michigan fans could clear that up too. But he's definitely a notorious amongst the Penn State fan base for those comments. And also in 2012, when Penn State was playing Nebraska, it was late in the game. I think Penn State was either trailing or trying to expand the lead. And Matt McGloin threw what the replay show was clearly a touchdown catch for the tight end, Matt Lehman, because the ball crossed the plane, and initially it was ruled an incomplete, or it was ruled short. But when you saw the replay, it was indisputable that it did cross the plane and it should have been reversed, but they ended up letting the call stand. And so I guess there's a similar kind of situation that occurred, which I think we'll get into as we talk about the game. So I'll leave it at that for now. But, but 8 penalties for 80 yards. Now, some of them were warranted, but there were also several phantom defensive holding calls that got thrown in there. And meanwhile, Iowa has 1 penalty for 5 yards when I saw multiple holds during the game, which they never got flagged for. So it was really infuriating. And there's even a petition now on change.org to get John O'Neill fired. That tells you how ticked off the Penn State fan base is over it.
Well, if some of those allegations are true and there's a history there and there's obvious bias that has tangible evidence, then it needs to be investigated and acted upon, it sounds like. Iowa, Penn State, really good game. Comes down to the last 2 minutes. Penn State's able to hang on to the football. Noah Cain gained some big first downs to close it out after the Brandon Smith touchdown reception for Iowa to make it close. That's the first Iowa touchdown of the game as Penn State's defense put the clamps down. But Penn State also under 300 yards of total offense. So, Tim, it was just one of those games where we should have anticipated this based on both teams' track records to coming into Kinnick Stadium, that it would be a bit of a dogfight and a defensive struggle.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not surprised at all with the final score. I think my prediction was, I said 22-15 because, with Penn State and Iowa clash, you get to expect some kind of weird score. I mean, Iowa scored 12 points, so I guess that sort of weirdish. But yeah, this is 2 very solid defenses showcasing their strengths. So I think I don't think anyone's surprised by how the final score was. Well, the final score ended up being. That being said, I was certainly impressed with how Penn State, especially late in the game, was able to establish the run game with Noah Cain. And Cain had his second straight 100-yard performance. He ended up with a total of 22 carries for 102 yards and scored a very crucial touchdown in the fourth quarter to put Penn State up 17-6. And even more importantly, if you ask me, late in the game when Iowa scored that amazing touchdown to go amazing touchdown grab by, I think it was
Brandon Smith.
Brandon Smith. Yes, it was Brandon Smith who made the amazing leaping grab over John Reed. Apparently, there's a term for it. You got mossed. I guess one of ESPN's NFL shows has a term for that. So apparently, Reed got mossed on that play by Brandon Smith. But that cut the all of a sudden, what was a 17-6 game went down to 17-12, 2.5 minutes to go. Iowa still has all 3 timeouts. So game's not quite over. And Kirk Ferentz, and I say rightfully so, took his chances on having 3 timeouts, having the best part of his team on the field, and knowing Penn State's recent history with their inability to run out the clock, especially in the James Franklin era, it was certainly the right gamble to take, if you ask me. But Noah Cain, to his credit, he just he bulldozed over people and helped Penn State pick up a couple of crucial first downs, and which ultimately allowed them to just run out the clock and never give the ball back to Iowa. So I think that's really where Cain was clutch, in my opinion. I think Penn State has finally found its closer. When you just need to pick up a first down or two late in the game, Franklin calls it the 4-minute offense. We need that 4-minute offense to either run out the clock or help you move the ball. I think it's clear Cain has established himself as a guy. And it really, if you ask me, and it seems from the feedback we've gotten in the comments section on Black Shoe Diaries that Cain should be the starting running back at this point. And that's something the staff had wanted to see for some time. They were going to keep playing the 4-person running back rotation until someone established himself as the guy. Now, I don't think they're suddenly going to just ride Noah Cain the entire game, but it's pretty clear to me he needs to be getting the bulk of the carries going forward. But, of course, you throw in like a Journey Brown or Devin Ford for a change of pace. Maybe even Ricky Slade, although he, I hate to say it, but unfortunately he's starting to look like the odd man out in this situation. But, maybe they could – he still has some ability to catch the ball out of the slot. So, perhaps a position change may do him good. But that's something we can touch on in a different broadcast.
Yeah, it's a storyline that you've helped us track back to the offseason in terms of Miles Sanders moving on to the NFL. Ricky Slade is the guy that everybody was familiar with in regards to having the most production and the most opportunities in relieving Miles Sanders, and he appeared to be the guy in place, and based on his recruiting ranking and all the hype coming out of high school, that he would be the guy. But then these 2 other guys come in, and Devin Ford and Noah Cain, they're top 5 running backs at their position coming out of high school. Journey Brown's in the mix, and it's been one of those deals where they've tried them all out, given them all time, pretty much a fair opportunity through the first 4 to 5 games. And it's pretty clear, based on playing one of the best teams on the schedule on the road, Noah Cain closes it out with 22 carries. The other 3 get 4 each. Not that, like you say, it's going to be that kind of distribution going forward, but it looks like Noah Cain would be the guy that's going to be favored in terms of the distribution. But it's a great place to be when you've got 4 running backs who are somewhat equal, and you can say, okay, this guy's proven to be the guy for right now. We'll ride the hot hand, but we've got 3 other guys and we can keep them fresh.
Oh, precisely. It's having that stable of backs definitely helps. Obviously we saw, as great as Saquon and Miles were, I'm sure it would have been nice to have had someone like a Noah Cain, especially. So, I'm starting to think if we had Noah Cain for the Rose Bowl a few years ago, perhaps we're able to run out the clock on USC, or at the very least not give Sam Darnold so much time to drive down the field for the game-tying score. And, especially against maybe Ohio State in 2017, where just needed to hang on and, avoid the furious comeback JT Barrett was putting on. But, again, I guess I want to keep playing the whole what if thing, but it's definitely good to have, a rotation of backs to go through, even if you're going to have one guy getting the bulk of the carry. So Ford and Brown seem to offer that change of pace as more speedster types. Although I'll say Devin Ford, he seems to at times be able to move the pile too. And you got to remember, he came in second summer session, so he didn't have a full. Unlike Noah Kane, who came in January, enrolled early, had time to go through the strength conditioning program that spring. That has been the case with Devin Ford, and considering that he's done well in his limited action. And I think his biggest highlight, obviously, is that 80-yard run he had against Idaho in the season opener. And I think you give Ford a full offseason with Dwight Galt's strength conditioning program, to bulk up, get faster. I think imagining him and Kane in the backfield with, Brown or whoever's still there. I don't know if Slade will still be around, to be honest with you, but you got a pair of 4-star backs out of Florida and Keziah Holmes and Kevon Lee coming in next year too. So, the Lom boys are, they're not going away anytime soon.
Sean Clifford's been tearing it up as of late. He faced the best defense that's on the schedule to date, 12 of 24 for 117 yards and a touchdown. So obviously it was one of those games in regards to run-pass ratio that James Franklin obviously felt very comfortable with the defensive effort against Iowa. They had control. And when I say control of the game, it wasn't decided, obviously, until late. But they always had a one-score lead throughout the game. Once they scored the first points of the game, had the one score. I think they went down 3-0. But basically, from the second quarter on, they had a one-score lead, extended it to 2 scores with about 5 minutes left. And so it just wasn't one of those games where he felt comfortable and needed to open it up. Plus, Iowa kept the ball for an extended period of time at times. So Clifford's performance, your thoughts about him? Because, again, he's started to light it up against some inferior competition, and then he runs into a good Iowa defense and doesn't turn the ball over. That's the positive.
Yeah, precisely. It wasn't his best performance, and the first few drives he definitely looked jittery and needed to calm down. And I think once he calmed down, he actually looked serviceable. He did good enough to keep the chains moving. Oh, and then like I said, did not turn the ball over. No interceptions, no fumbles. He probably ran more than I would have liked to have seen him run. 16 times, 67 yards. But some of those were by design. Also other times he decided to just take off and run if he sensed pressure. And at times he did make Iowa pay for not respecting his running ability. So he was able to extend some drives with his legs, which was critical. He also did throw a couple touchdown. I say 2 touchdown passes because as we touched on earlier with the officiating crew, he had a touchdown pass to Pat Freiermuth that was ruled a touchdown initially, and they were showing the replay, and it's disputable whether it was or whether the call was correct. So you couldn't quite tell if the ball was over the pylon before passing hit the ground. And in that case, if it's disputable, you have to go with what the original call was, which was a touchdown. But in this case, the refereeing crew decided to overturn it and say it wasn't a touchdown catch. And then the next play, Penn State seemingly runs it in for a touchdown. Journey Brown that gets called back for a holding. The very next play, Sean Clifford runs it in for a touchdown. Another holding call. So if you're keeping track, that's 3 touchdowns that were overturned in the same drive. And when the very first one should have never been overturned to begin with. And that ended up Penn State did get a field goal out of the drive, but it should have been 14-6 at that point. And, things would have been still a 1-possession game, but things would be a little different. Penn State up 21-6 late instead of 17-6, and then Iowa gets that touchdown. And then if they kick the extra point, it's 21-13, or maybe they decide to go for 2 there. If they don't get it, then it's 21-12 in a 2-possession game. And then that changes things drastically too. And actually, speaking of that Iowa touchdown, there's another strange call there. The play before the touchdown pass, it was 3rd and 1. and Nate Stanley, the Iowa quarterback, fumbles a snap, and they fall on it, and it looks like it's going to be 4th and 1. And instead, the referees say it's a first down. I mean, somehow they thought the ball moved a yard as in that process, but it didn't seem like that was the case. But if that's 4th and 1, then Iowa's probably not taking a shot at the end zone like they did the very next play. I'm not saying they wouldn't have ended up in the end zone on that drive, but if they did, it would have happened a little bit later, like maybe with a minute and a half left instead of 2.5 minutes. So again, is where I go back to where Penn State had to not only beat Iowa, but they had to beat the refs too at times, it seemed.
Talking Penn State football, we got Tim Maiden on the line from SB Nation's Black Shoe Diaries. Michigan's up next. Of course, the series has been one of the most important and brand name powerful matchups in the Big Ten. That's been a back and forth series in regards to the dominance of the victories by both teams. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot in between after a string of very close games, exciting games down to the wire. The last 4 or 5 trips back and forth have been pretty much like Michigan wins at home and they stomp Penn State. Wolverines head to Happy Valley and then get the return type of treatment from Penn State in the last few years at Penn State. So it's obviously a big game. I would be surprised to see another blowout. Might be similar to what we saw at Iowa, considering the way Michigan plays defense and has had issues on the offensive side as well.
So yeah, I'm not ready to make a score prediction yet. But I think I would be surprised if it was a blowout similar to how the last couple of years have gone for the home team in this one. Michigan sports another really great defense, similar to Iowa's. They held the Hawkeyes in check when they played in Ann Arbor a couple weeks ago, holding them to only a field goal. And Don Brown loves to blitz the hell out of you, and I fully expect them to try and do so to Sean Clifford. Blitz the hell out of him, try to get him rattled, get him off his rhythm. If they're able to do that, it could be a rough night for the Penn State offense. But at the same time, though, if Penn State's able to counter that with some, maybe some quick passes, some screens, or if Noah Cain's able to establish the ground game for them early on, they could definitely get them back on their heels. And I know they definitely like to play. I think Don Brown's a big fan of playing man on opponents, and I do like the speed of State's receivers, especially KJ Hamler and Jahan Dotson to potentially get open and make some things happen. Although they are facing a strong Michigan secondary as well, probably better than Iowa's. So the Penn State offense versus Michigan defense will be something to watch. And on the other side, especially, I'm curious to see how Penn State defense is able to take advantage of a Michigan offense, which, while certainly not lacking in talent, they've definitely been lacking in execution. I've reading some stat earlier that Michigan's fumbled the ball 17 times this season and lost it 9 times. So if they can, it sounds like there could be some golden opportunities there if they're able to, if Michigan's continuing to, shoot itself in the foot at the rate they've been doing. I mean, there's probably some opportunities for Penn State to grab a couple turnovers in that game. If they can do so, create a short field for the offense and, lead to some easy scoring drives. Shea Patterson it looked like he's seemingly regressed from last season. For whatever reason, just hasn't handled this current offensive system that Josh Gaddis, former Penn State wide receivers coach Josh Gaddis, I should say, has installed up there. It's against teams with a pulse. It's looked like a disjointed mess. Of course, you put up 52 on Rutgers, but that's Rutgers. And so, I'm curious. And being that it's on the road in Happy Valley of a whiteout, I mean, I'm really curious to see how. I would like to see that Penn State defense just feed off that energy and just dominate like they've been doing all season long. Force them into some 3rd and long situations, get Shea Patterson rattled, just bottle up the running game, which it hasn't been all that great from my understanding to begin with. But they do have a true freshman, Jack Charbonnet, who's showcased some of his skills.
Yeah, so Michigan, the entire offseason was the talk about the Josh Gaddis offense and it being a complete revitalization of what they do, taking the fullbacks and the tight ends off the field, spreading the field, using elite wide receiver talent that they have, spacing out the defense, doing all those things, up tempo. And I think they're just kind of caught in between. Shea Patterson's been a big disappointment. He's been a 50% passer the last few weeks when they played not even decent defenses in Illinois. As you mentioned, 52 against Rutgers. Throw that out just based on the level of competition, and the offense has been subpar each and every game. And they're supposed to have one of the best offensive lines in the Big Ten. Maybe they do. Their running back situation's been depleted, but as you mentioned, Zach Charbonnet has been the main guy. This past week, they found another kid in Hassan Haskins who ran for about 120 yards, and he had been completely non-existent in the game plan before that game, running for 10 or 12 yards per game, a couple carries, and then all of a sudden he found some big plays. But they found themselves struggling against Illinois 28-25 with about 10 minutes left in the game. So it's not been a good Michigan effort on offense. The defense has pretty much been what you would expect it to be, one of the best in the Big Ten. But it seems like they don't really know, as you mentioned, kind of a grab bag on offense, and they're kind of lost in between philosophies, and they need to get things figured out. The talent would seem to be there, but maybe Shea Patterson's not the kid, and they are clamoring the fans for Joe Milton or Dylan McCaffrey. But we will see. They have yet to pull the trigger on that. But yeah, they've had issues hanging on to the football, and that doesn't bode well for going into Happy Valley and trying to score enough points to win.
Yeah, like you said, I think they seem to have the talent there in offense, but for whatever reason, they're just not putting it together. The execution's lacking. I think maybe it's just it was a drastic switch from what they have been playing previously, a more pro style or man ball, as Jim Harbaugh likes to call it, kind of offense. Try to cram the ball down your throats type of offense, to now a more spread. Yeah, like I said, got a speed and space type offense. And yeah, the transition it seems the transition has just been really disjointed. You have to think once there should come a point when they piece it all together. And you figured, I guess I thought maybe like in the off season, okay, maybe it could look a little rough in the beginning, but you figure by mid-season they ought to look a little smoother, be picking up the nuances of this new offense better. But that doesn't seem to have been the case. Now, they did jump out to, like I said, that Illinois game, they jumped out to a 28-0 lead. Now, I say the caveat that Illinois is not a very good team, especially in the defensive side of the ball. But it looked like they were going to cruise to an easy win and rest their starters in the second half, which would have been a nice advantage to have on Penn State, considering they had to go the full 4 quarters against Iowa. But Illinois put on a furious rally, cut the lead, scored 25 straight points. Didn't allow Michigan to really rest their starters, maybe until the very last drive when Michigan had a 17-point lead late. But that was kind of an opportunity missed there for Michigan to be able to rest their guys for a full half before heading into a very tough game in Happy Valley this upcoming week.
Michigan Penn State showcased on a Saturday night in Happy Valley. It's obviously one of the big series in the Big Ten. Both defenses look primed, although Michigan did have to let down against Wisconsin. I don't know if Penn State's quite capable of taking on the Wisconsin approach, but Jonathan Taylor went time and time again at the Michigan defense, and they just obliterated them up front. Otherwise, you would think that the Michigan defense would be pretty entrenched against the run and have been strong the rest of the season. But that was the one team that really took it to them, and I think demoralized them in the second half, or not even into the second quarter, in a 35-0 game at halftime. But otherwise, it's a Michigan team that's struggling on offense, relying on defense. The Penn State narrative has been that the offense has developed over the last several weeks, started to open it up, started to find themselves, but then they go to Iowa, and maybe that was just Iowa at night. The offense is going to struggle. It's that kind of game, or maybe it's the Penn State offense still has some growth to undergo before taking on these kind of defenses, and maybe we get another 17-13 kind of game. All right, Tim, we appreciate you stopping by. Anything else you need to lay down for us before we move on?
Well, I know it's going to be a big recruiting weekend for Penn State. It's really mostly 2021 and 22 kids there that are supposed to be in attendance. I don't have the list pulled up on me, but there's still a couple spots left in the 2020 class, and one of the big visitors is tight end Theo Johnson, 2020 kid out of Canada. Michigan and Penn State are two of his finalists. I think the crystal ball so far favored Theo to Penn State, and I think this Whiteout, being at the Whiteout, could certainly help sway him towards the E-Lines. He's supposed to decide sometime by the either end of this month or early next month. So his decision day is coming up soon. So, but yeah, for the underclassmen, the 21, 22 kids, this would be a nice way for Penn State to showcase the Whiteout atmosphere and hopefully get a big win and, in prime time, and give those kids something to remember for the rest of their lives.
All right, Tim, as always, appreciate you stopping by, getting us set for Penn State football on Saturday.
Sure thing, Mark. Thanks for having me.